big chunk.
Ah, shit.
Are you okay?
I watch a lot of cooking shows, probably too many. So when I started noticing that the "where are they now" trails on some of these contestants were going really dark, really fast, I decided to actually dig in. Autopsy reports, court documents, coroner findings. 10 cases later, this video exists. One of them I'll tease at the start and come back to at the end, because it deserves a proper telling. And the last case is, genuinely, one of the darkest things I've ever researched. Let's begin. July 2014, Los Angeles, the set of Hell's Kitchen Season 12. The final 5 chefs are in the kitchen, and one of them is Rochelle Bergman, a chef from Riverside, California, in her late 30s. One of those competitors who'd made it deep into the season by being consistent rather than flashy. The challenge that afternoon involves pumpkins, because it's roughly around Halloween in the production calendar. Because, of course, Rochelle, Joy, and Melanie are gutting and carving these pumpkins in the kitchen, while Scott and Jason are off on some reward trip for winning the previous challenge. And then, because knives and pumpkins are what they are, Rochelle slips. Except this isn't a little nick. She slices a chunk off her thumb. A literal physical piece of her thumb detaches from her hand and lands on the cutting board next to the pumpkin she was prepping. Rochelle immediately puts her hand under running water.
Uh-oh. Oh, fuck. Think? Oh, that was a big chunk. Are you okay?
Joy calls the medics. And then Joy and Melanie are left in this genuinely surreal situation where neither of them wants to touch or look at the piece of thumb sitting on the cutting board, but they also can't just leave it there, so they start frantically covering it with a napkin while gagging simultaneously. Real quote from that scene: "Please pray for us, there's a chunk of thumb on the counter." The medic arrives, pulls Rochelle out of the kitchen, takes her to urgent care, and informs her that the wound needs to be cauterized, which, for those who don't speak medical, means they have to seal the open flesh with heat because there's nothing left to stitch together. The piece of thumb was on the cutting board. The rest of the thumb had to be burned closed. Here's where it gets specifically twisted. That specific night's dinner service was going to feature Stan Lee, the actual Stan Lee.
So welcome. Good to meet you.
The man who created Spider-Man, the Hulk, the X-Men, the entire Marvel Universe, was sitting at the chef's table, and this was one of the biggest VIP nights in Hell's Kitchen's entire run. And Rochelle, with a partially cauterized thumb and a medical bandage wrapped around her hand, came back from urgent care, showed Gordon Ramsay her injured hand, and told him she could perform. Ramsay put her on the meat station.
That'll be okay. There's bandages for the next couple days.
Okay, good. So, on meat, please, yes?
Yes, chef.
She served Stan Lee's table, with a chunk of her thumb missing. Stan Lee ate food that night, prepared by a woman who, hours earlier, had been watching her co-workers gag over a piece of her body on a cutting board. And look, I get it. The show goes on. That's the phrase every reality TV producer falls back on. But the implicit message of that episode, and of a dozen episodes like it across Hell's Kitchen's run, is that a serious medical injury is a temporary inconvenience, not a stop-work event. You go to urgent care, you come back, you serve Stan Lee, you don't hold up the production. That's the deal. That's what the show expects. Just in case you thought Fox learned anything from Season 12, let's jump to Season 16, filmed in late 2014 but aired in 2016. William Coop Wincoop was a kitchen manager from Cary, Ohio. Big guy, composed. The kind of guy you'd expect to shrug off a kitchen injury and keep cooking. During a head-to-head challenge on Southern cuisine, Coop was making a ceviche with shrimp.
Coop and Heidi.
Shrimp.
Ceviche, if you've never made it, requires a lot of delicate knife work, especially on fibrous stuff like celery stalks. Thin dice, precise cuts, constant speed. During the cooking, Coop's knife went through his fingertip. Not a little cut, right through the nail bed.
Ah, shit.
He took the entire fingernail clean off his finger, along with a chunk of the tissue underneath. He put pressure on the wound, walked to the medic station, and sat down in a chair. And here's the part that you can actually see on the footage, if you look it up. Fox aired this. Coop passing out on national television is somewhere on YouTube. Coop starts telling the medic he's feeling lightheaded. The medic looks up, and before anyone can respond, Coop just goes. Eyes roll back. Body goes limp in the chair. Gets sick while completely unconscious. Gordon Ramsay runs over. The medic slaps an oxygen mask over Coop's face while he's still out cold. For a genuinely terrifying stretch of seconds, nobody knows if this is a simple faint, a seizure, a reaction to the blood loss, a concussion from hitting his head on the chair, or something much worse. Eventually he comes back, confused with no idea what just happened. He's fine, medically. He lost that round of the challenge because he couldn't finish his dish. His team forfeited the point. Coop kept competing, got eliminated in episode 9 after throwing a chair at a wall in frustration, and now, according to the last reliable update, works in the automotive industry in Ohio. But that image of him slumped unconscious in a chair with an oxygen mask on his face, while Ramsay and a medic hover over him, is one of those moments that makes you wonder what the actual threshold is, production-wise, before somebody decides to pause filming, because a chef collapsed and unresponsive on set apparently didn't clear it. Now we start moving into the section where people don't just get hurt, they don't survive. Aaron Song was 48 years old when he auditioned for Hell's Kitchen Season 3 in 2007. He was from Rancho Palos Verdes, California. His family had owned a restaurant called the Tea House in Torrance, and he'd taken it over in 1997 when his mother got sick. He was a Pan-Asian chef, a harmonica player with a band called the Chinese Blues All-Stars, a lifelong Lakers fan, a UCLA grad, and by every account one of the kindest people to ever walk into Hell's Kitchen. He was also a diabetic, and Hell's Kitchen, as a production, either didn't know or didn't care. The show put Aaron through the standard treatment, Signature Dish Challenge, where Ramsay made jokes about never seeing an Asian cowboy before.
You are one chunky monkey, aren't you?
Yes, chef.
Normal service stations, normal punishments for losing challenges. Then, during episode 3, the blue team lost a service challenge to the red team, and the punishment was KP duty, kitchen prep duty, which involved prepping 1,000 pounds of potatoes and onions for the next service, moving sacks of potatoes, peeling them, chopping them. At 5:58 in the morning, after a sleep-deprived night, Aaron was already cramping. His teammates Rock and Brad had to help him get dressed because his hands wouldn't work.
First time I've ever been dressed by two guys.
During the punishment, moving one of the potato sacks into the kitchen, Aaron collapsed, went down on the floor of Hell's Kitchen. The medics were called. He was taken by ambulance to the hospital. The next day, Ramsay called Aaron and told him he couldn't continue in the competition. The official explanation was that his ongoing health complications made it too dangerous to keep him on set, which, fine. That's a reasonable decision.
I feel disappointed. I mean, I've worked almost 40 years in a kitchen for what?
But it's the reasonable decision that should have been made before casting a 48-year-old diabetic and forcing him to prep 1,000 pounds of potatoes at 6 a.m. after a week of emotionally and physically brutalizing him on national television. Aaron went home. He tried to capitalize on his brief reality TV visibility. He became a low-level celebrity chef. He did cooking demonstrations around Southern California. He worked with the Salvation Army, teaching veterans in recovery how to cook. He was a spokesman for Henry's Farmers Markets. He kept on keeping on, as much as his body would let him. On November 30th, 2010, 3 years after his Hell's Kitchen appearance, Aaron Song died in Rancho Palos Verdes from complications of diabetes. He was 51 years old. Nobody's saying Hell's Kitchen killed Aaron Song. His condition was going to do what it did regardless. But the pattern, again, is that the show cast a man whose health couldn't handle what the show was about to put him through it anyway, released him back into the world with a minor celebrity bump and zero ongoing support, and then expressed public condolences when the inevitable happened 3 years later. Joseph Cherniglia was 39 years old, a father of 3, and the owner of Campagna, an Italian restaurant in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, when he called Gordon Ramsay's production team in 2007 asking for help. His restaurant was drowning. He'd lost $120,000 in 18 months. He owed his purveyors $80,000 in cold, hard cash.
I won't even feature my dog. Terrible.
He was about to lose the business, the house, the kids' college funds, all of it. Kitchen Nightmares, the Ramsay Restaurant Rehab Show, came in to help. The episode aired in Season 1, Episode 9, and it's genuinely difficult to watch now, knowing what came after. Ramsay does what Ramsay does on Kitchen Nightmares. He berates Cherniglia's cooking. He mocks the portion sizes. He tells him, on camera, "Why did you decide to go into business? If you haven't got a clue how to run a business?" Cherniglia starts welling up.
Why did you decide to go into business if you haven't got a clue how to run a business?
His wife appears on camera and says, sobbing, "If this business fails, we will lose everything."
If this restaurant failed,
We would lose everything. I mean, I'll lose my house.
His mother tells the cameras, "I worry about Joe. I worry about his stress levels." And then Ramsey, in a moment that in retrospect feels less like reality TV and more like a literal prophecy, says to Cherniglia, "Your business is about to f***ing swim down the Hudson." The business actually survived. After the episode aired, Campagna saw the bump that kitchen nightmares restaurants typically see. The parking lot filled up on weekends. Locals came in to see the guy from the show. Cherniglia kept running the place. He kept cooking. He kept being a husband and a father for 3 years. On the afternoon of September 24th, 2010, somebody called 911 to report that a person had just gone off the George Washington Bridge. Joseph Cherniglia's body was pulled from the Hudson River later that day, floating near the 145th Street Pier. The New York City Medical Examiner ruled his death self-inflicted, drowning with blunt impact injuries consistent with a fall from the bridge. Let me say that out loud one more time. 3 years after Gordon Ramsay told Joseph Cherniglia on national television that his business was about to swim down the Hudson, Joseph Cherniglia's body was pulled out of the Hudson. Cherniglia's family was clear with the press that they didn't blame Ramsay. His sister said Joe had liked Ramsay. His brother-in-law said Ramsay had been nothing but a gentleman off camera. The family asked for donations to support Cherniglia's widow and 3 sons instead of flowers. Ramsay issued a statement. "I was fortunate to spend time with Joe during the first season of Kitchen Nightmares. Joe was a brilliant chef, and our thoughts go out to his family, friends, and staff." And again, you have to be careful here. Cherniglia had problems that predated Kitchen Nightmares. The show didn't make his restaurant go bankrupt. The show didn't cause the debt. But the show put a man who was already drowning on national TV and filmed him crying and then broadcast that footage to millions of people as entertainment. And when that man eventually went off a bridge, the network's official response was a sympathy tweet and the next season. That's the genre. That's the machine. By the way, Cherniglia was the second chef from a Ramsay show to end his own life. The first was a Hell's Kitchen Season 2 contestant named Rachel Brown, who passed in 2007, the year before Cherniglia's episode even aired, and he wouldn't be the last. Matt Campbell was 29 years old. He was from Kendal in England's Lake District, and he'd just made it to the semi-finals of MasterChef. The Professionals in 2017, the BBC version of MasterChef, aimed at people who've worked in professional kitchens for at least 2 years. He was genuinely talented. He called his cooking style nutritional gastronomy. Elegant dishes loaded with superfoods, the kind of thing that sounds a little buzzwordy on paper but translated beautifully on the plate. He'd cooked for Hollywood A-listers at the Oscars that year. He was doing a series of events around the country. His career was, by every reasonable measure, about to go extremely vertical. He was also a runner. His dad, Martin, had been a runner before him, specifically a photographer and videographer for a charity called the Brathay Trust, which runs an event called the Brathay 10 in 10, which is 10 marathons in 10 consecutive days. Martin had photographed and videotaped every single day of that challenge since 2008. He'd become part of the event's identity. And then, in 2016, Martin died. Matt decided to honor his father by running 2 marathons in April of 2018, the Manchester Marathon on the 8th, and the London Marathon 2 weeks later on the 22nd. He wanted to do both in under 3 hours. He set up a Just Giving page aiming to raise £1,750 for the Brathay Trust, the charity his dad had loved. He called the team Camera Dude, his dad's nickname. He ran Manchester on April 8th. He finished it. 2 weeks later, on Sunday, April 22nd, 2018, Matt lined up for the London Marathon. It turned out to be the hottest London Marathon on record up to that point, a genuinely brutal run for everyone involved. Matt was running for his dad, running for charity, running on a course he'd trained for, running his second marathon in 14 days. At mile 22.5, roughly 4 miles from the finish line, Matt collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital. He was pronounced dead later that day. The cause was attributed to heat exhaustion compounded by cardiac failure. His body, already taxed from Manchester, couldn't handle the combination of the heat and the distance. He was 29 years old. The MasterChef team released a statement. "We are shocked and saddened to hear the news about Matt Campbell, one of our talented contestants from last year," which is again the standard phrasing for what these shows say when their former contestants die. But what happened next was actually moving. A Facebook group started up almost immediately with the hashtag finish format. People around the world committed to running the final 3.7 miles of a marathon that Matt couldn't finish, wherever they were, and donating £5 to his Just Giving page. The page, which had been aiming for £1,750, passed £100,000 within days. Thousands of strangers finished Matt's race for him. The Brathay Trust used the money to fund a youth residential project in his dad's memory, extending the legacy both men had built. I include Matt in this list not because MasterChef killed him. It didn't. He died doing something he'd chosen to do, for a cause that mattered to him, in honor of the father he'd lost. But he died during the precise narrow window when reality TV had made him visible, and the story of his life got folded into the story of the show, and that's how these things go. The genre absorbs the lives it briefly touches, whether the people involved asked for that or not. We're descending deeper now. The next two cases are kids, actual children. So if you need to step away, this is your warning. Fuller Goldsmith was 3 years old when he was first diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in and out of the Children's Hospital in Birmingham, fighting a cancer that kept coming back no matter how many rounds of treatment he survived. By 14, he'd already beaten it 3 times. He was a 4-time survivor of a disease that kills a lot of kids who catch it once. He was also somehow an incredibly talented cook. His mother, Melissa, said he got interested at age 4, mimicking her and her husband as they made dinner.
But he kept trying, and we kept critiquing him, and he got better and better until now he can cook better than I can.
By the time he was a teenager, he was apprenticing at a restaurant in Tuscaloosa called Southern Ale House. The owner, Robert Holt, said Fuller spent a lot of time helping prep, serve, and create recipes. And Fuller had this thing he said in an interview with the local Tuscaloosa paper that sticks with me. When I was sick, cooking was the only thing that got me up. If I was just laying down doing nothing, my feet and legs would hurt. But when I was moving around in the kitchen, I wouldn't be hurting as much. At 13, he auditioned for Chopped Jr. on Food Network. At 14, he won it. His winning dish involved powdered sugar beignets and beer-battered catfish. He took home $10,000 in prize money. And then he did something that genuinely breaks me to think about. He donated every single dollar of the $10,000 to the Division of Hematology and Pediatric Oncology at Birmingham Children's Hospital, the same division that had been keeping him alive since he was 3. Not half, not a portion, all of it. He went on to compete on Bravo's Top Chef Jr. Guy Fieri, one of his heroes, surprised him at the Stagecoach Music Festival in 2018, and Fieri told him, "What you've already accomplished in your life is amazing. You don't give up. You gotta believe. You gotta trust. You gotta go. You gotta fight hard. And it's not easy."
I'll tell you, you gotta believe, you gotta trust, you gotta go, you gotta fight hard. It's not easy.
That's Guy Fieri, who's not a man you'd typically associate with deep pep talks, and he was out there trying to give a kid with a terminal illness the encouragement to keep going. In February 2021, Fuller posted on Instagram that the leukemia was back for a 5th time. Round 5, I'm ready to fight. That was his attitude. That was always his attitude. On October 6th, 2021, Fuller Goldsmith died at the age of 17. He would have turned 18 that Saturday. He didn't make it that far. Vanessa Lachey, who hosted Top Chef Jr., wrote, "We all loved Fuller so much, and will never forget his contagious smile, laugh, and butter tricks. His $10,000 donation is still sitting in an endowment at Children's of Alabama, helping treat other kids with the same leukemia he fought, which is the most Fuller thing imaginable, honestly. The 14-year-old who won a cooking show and decided the money was more useful to the hospital than to him." Ben Watkins was 11 when he competed on MasterChef Junior Season 6 in 2018. He was from Gary, Indiana. His father, Mike, ran a local restaurant there called Big Ben's Bodacious Barbecue and Delicatessen, where Ben would work the register, take orders, and sell his own homemade cinnamon rolls, cookies, brownies, and banana bread on the side. The kind of kid who, at 11, could sit down with a Chicago Tribune reporter and explain that he wanted to be a professional chef and open his own restaurant one day, just like his dad. And you believed him. He placed in the top 18 of MasterChef Junior that season. Among 40 contestants, as a literal child, he was that good. Here's the part of Ben's story that makes what happens next genuinely hard to take. In September 2017, 1 year before Ben filmed MasterChef Junior, both of Ben's parents, Layla and Mike, died in a single tragic domestic incident. Ben was 10 years old. He lost his mother and his father on the same day. The restaurant closed the month they died. The community in Miller Beach, the neighborhood in Gary where Ben lived, rallied around him. A GoFundMe called #Love4.
Please donate to GoFundMe, #Love4Ben.
Ben raised over $30,000 for his education and his culinary dreams. He moved in with his grandmother Donna and his uncle Anthony. And then he went on MasterChef Junior at 11, 1 year after his parents died. He cooked, he competed, he made it to the top 18. Ramsay and the other judges were visibly moved by him. Not in a manipulative reality TV way, but in a genuine, this kid is remarkable way that came through even through the edit. In 2019, when Ben was 13, he was diagnosed with angiomatoid fibrous histiocytoma. If you've never heard of it, that's because almost nobody has. At the time of his diagnosis, the condition had affected an estimated 6 people. 6, in all of recorded medical history. It's a rare soft tissue tumor that almost exclusively appears in children and young adults, and the treatment protocols were essentially being written in real time because the sample size was so small. Ben fought it for 18 months. His fellow MasterChef Junior contestants recorded a group video sending him messages in August 2020. On November 16, 2020, Ben died at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago. He was 14 years old. Gordon Ramsay's tribute read, "Ben, you were an incredibly talented home cook and even stronger young man. Your young life had so many tough turns, but you always persevered." Tough turns is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Ben had lost both parents in a single tragic incident. Then he lost his father's restaurant. Then he got a cancer so rare that his doctors could count the other known cases on their fingers. Then he died before he could become the chef he had told that Tribune reporter he was going to be. And the genre that had briefly made him visible marked his death with a tweet and moved on to season 7. Jock Zonfrillo was born in Glasgow in 1976. His dad Ivan was a barber. His mom Sarah was a hairdresser. He started working in restaurant kitchens at 12 as a dishwasher. By 15, he'd left school and was doing an apprenticeship at the Turnberry Hotel. Somewhere in those years, Jock also developed a serious addiction, specifically with heroin, a fact he would eventually put at the center of his 2021 memoir, which he titled Last Shot, after the literal last shot he took in a London Heathrow airport toilet before flying to Australia to get clean.
Smoking heroin at 15, 16 when I was an apprentice.
By the time he died, he'd been sober for more than 2 decades. He moved to Australia in 2000. He rose through Sydney restaurants. He eventually founded the Orana Foundation, which worked on cataloguing Australia's indigenous ingredients and bringing them into fine dining. His restaurant Orana was named one of the best in the world. In 2019, he was announced as one of the new judges on MasterChef Australia, alongside Melissa Leong and Andy Allen. The 3 of them became the new face of the show. Genuinely beloved, genuinely warm, the kind of judge panel that made the 2020's seasons of MasterChef Australia feel like something other than a competition. In 2021, Jock was diagnosed with bowel cancer. He kept it quiet. When he wasn't filming MasterChef, he was getting chemotherapy. According to reports that emerged after his death, barely anyone in his professional circle knew. His colleagues, his friends, almost nobody. He didn't want anyone to know. He kept filming. He kept judging. He kept being the warm, charismatic Scottish chef on Australian TV. In early 2023, Jock moved his family to Rome. His wife Lauren and their children Alfie and Isla were settling into Italy. The 2023 season of MasterChef Australia, his 4th season as a judge, had already been filmed. It was scheduled to premiere on May 1st, 2023. Jock had flown from Rome back to Melbourne a few days earlier to do the press circuit for the premiere. Interviews, photo shoots, the standard rollout. He checked into Zagame's house hotel in Carlton, Melbourne. His wife tried to call him from Italy and couldn't reach him. She called the Victoria Police to do a welfare check. Officers arrived at his hotel room around 2 a.m. on April 30th, 2023. They found Jock dead. He was 46. The 2023 season of MasterChef Australia, which he had filmed, was scheduled to premiere the next day. The show was postponed a week. On the night it would have premiered, Channel 10 aired a special episode of The Sunday Project reflecting on his life. The coroner investigated. The investigation lasted most of a year. When it concluded, the coroner made the unusual decision to not publicly release the findings, which is allowed in Victoria but relatively rare. Family sources told the Australian media that Jock had died of natural causes related to his cancer. Police confirmed nothing suspicious was found in the hotel room. No drugs, no signs of a relapse after 20-plus years sober. The official cause remains withheld. The MasterChef Australia season that Jock had filmed aired the next week. You can watch it. You can see him judging, laughing, doing the thing he'd built the back half of his career on. He's gone, and he's still on TV. That's the thing about these shows. The footage outlives the people. We've reached the case that the Food Network itself has tried to erase. So brace yourself, because this one is genuinely one of the worst things I've ever researched. Ariel Robinson was 30 years old, a middle school English teacher from Simpsonville, South Carolina, with a master's degree from Clemson University. She and her husband Jerry, who also went by Austin, had 2 biological children. In 2020, Ariel auditioned for and competed on season 20 of Food Network's Worst Cooks in America. She won.
Winner of Worst Cooks in America is Ariel.
Oh my God.
She took home $25,000 in a feel-good success story about a woman who couldn't cook learning to cook. The episode aired. She went home. About 2 weeks after she got back from filming, the Robinsons took in 3 new foster children, siblings, including a 3-year-old girl named Victoria Tori Rose Smith. Tori and her brothers had been placed in the Robinson home by the South Carolina foster system. Ariel would later testify in court that Tori was her mini-me, a perfect child who followed her around and had no behavioral issues.
She was my mini-me. She would talk like me.
On January 14th, 2021, roughly 3 months after Tori moved in, Ariel Robinson fatally beat her 3-year-old foster daughter with a belt because Tori wasn't eating her pancakes fast enough at breakfast. I'm going to let that sentence sit, because your brain won't process it the first time. A Food Network winner fatally harmed a 3-year-old foster child with a leather belt because the child was eating her pancakes too slowly. Her husband Jerry testified that he was outside doing yard work when it happened. He could hear the beating through the walls. He could hear Tori crying. It went on for roughly an hour. When he finally walked inside, he saw Ariel standing over the child with the belt, saying, "You don't get to tell me when you're done." Jerry said to her, "You've gone too far. You went too far this time." Then, rather than calling an ambulance, he went to CVS to buy liquid Tylenol to try to bring down the bruising. They gave Tori an Epsom salt bath. It was hours later, after Tori had gone into cardiac arrest, that Jerry finally called 911.
You have an emergency, our daughter.
When first responders arrived, they found Tori unresponsive on her bedroom floor, covered head to toe in bruises. The body cam footage, which was played in court, shows Ariel blaming herself for doing CPR wrong, and then pivoting to blame Tori's 7-year-old brother Jaden for the bruising. "He will hit her with a shoe," Ariel is heard saying. "He'll find one of Austin's belts, a hanger, anything that is around because he is angry." The Greenville County Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Michael Ward, testified that the injuries weren't what he'd call traditional bruises. He said, "This is a severe, deep injury that is tearing tissue from tissue." The pediatric intensive care doctor who treated Tori at the hospital before she died, Dr. Christina Gobin, said, "This is extensive, dependent on a child's body that was inflicted repetitively by blunt force trauma, which is the worst I've seen." An investigator testified that Tori's brother Jaden was physically too small to have inflicted the injuries Ariel was trying to blame him for. Jerry pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting homicide by child abuse. Ariel went to trial in May 2022 and took the stand to try to blame Jerry. The jury deliberated for roughly an hour and a half, guilty on homicide by child abuse. Judge Letitia H. Verdon sentenced Ariel to life in prison. During sentencing, Verdon said, "I can say that in my 14 years of being a judge, I've never seen anything like this, not even approaching it."
14 years of being a judge, I've never seen anything like this.
Food Network's response was dramatic in a way the industry usually isn't. They pulled Worst Cooks in America Season 20 from every streaming platform. Not Discovery Plus, not Hulu, not Max, not Food Network's own servers. The episodes still exist in a vault somewhere, but as far as the public is concerned, the season that Ariel Robinson won has been deleted from the cultural record, which is arguably the right call. Nobody wants to watch a woman who fatally harmed a child celebrating a cooking victory. But it's also a kind of confession, the Food Network acknowledging, retroactively, that the people it vets for reality shows sometimes turn out to be the kind of people who shouldn't be allowed near children. Tori Smith was 3 years old. She had 2 brothers who loved her. She had moved into a home that the state of South Carolina had approved as safe. She died on a bedroom floor because she ate her pancakes too slowly. Her name needs to be part of this story. Victoria Rose Smith, 3 years old, January 14th, 2021. Okay, now let's go back to that alley in Chicago. Joshua Marks was 7 feet 2 inches tall. He was from the south side of Chicago, a graduate of Tougaloo College. His friends and family called him the Gentle Giant, and he was a soft-spoken, genuinely sweet man who could intimidate a room just by standing up and who then immediately unintimidated everyone by saying something warm and thoughtful. In 2012, at age 25, he auditioned for MasterChef Season 3. Gordon Ramsay was one of the judges. Joe Bastianich and Graham Elliott were the others. Josh was the fan favorite that entire season, in a way that felt completely unmanufactured. The audience just liked him because he was likable. He consistently surprised the judges with the sophistication of his dishes. Ramsay offered him a job on camera. Bastianich offered him one too. In the finale, he lost to Christine Ha, a blind chef who was herself a remarkable competitor, but Josh had come very close to winning the whole thing. The same month he finished as runner-up, September 2012, Josh was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He didn't hide it, he went public.
Me personally, I have bipolar disorder, so I get a little anxious sometimes.
He became a national spokesman for the Make a Sound project, an organization that helps prevent crisis, and he shared openly that he'd struggled with very dark thoughts.
I'm out here with Make a Sound project.
In 2012, before mental health advocacy by reality TV contestants was something that happened regularly, he was ahead of his time. In July 2013, something broke. Josh had what his lawyer would later describe as a mental break. The exact sequence is genuinely hard to reconstruct, but here's what we know. Josh attempted to harm himself and sustained a serious injury to his face, but survived. Then he called the police from his own emergency phone, asking for help. When the officers arrived, they didn't recognize that they were responding to a psychiatric emergency with someone who had just been gravely injured. A scuffle broke out. Josh allegedly tried to take one of the officers' weapons. It took 5 officers to subdue him, using batons and pepper spray. He fractured his jaw. He had the injury to his face. He kept trying to run. When they finally had him in custody, Josh told the officers that Gordon Ramsay had possessed him and turned him into God. He was arrested, charged with aggravated battery against a police officer, and placed in Cook County Jail's general population with an unhealed injury and an ongoing psychiatric break, rather than being sent for psychiatric evaluation. His lawyer, Lisa Butler, later called this a catastrophic failure of the criminal justice system. MasterChef, according to reporting from another Season 3 contestant named Ben Starr, started reaching out to the other contestants from that season and asking them not to talk to the press. Josh eventually got out. He entered a treatment program. On Thursday, October 10, 2013, the day he completed the program, a doctor at the facility added a new diagnosis on top of the bipolar, schizophrenia. Josh, according to Butler, was devastated. He kept telling his mother, "That's not what I am. That's not what I am." He spent Thursday night at his grandfather's house, where his mother stayed with him. He spent most of Friday there too. His mother only left for a few hours in the afternoon to pick up his sister from school. That was when a neighbor saw Joshua walking around an alleyway in the Longwood Manor neighborhood, pacing with a revolver in his hand. His mother was stuck in Chicago rush hour traffic when her brother called her. By the time anyone reached Josh, it was too late. He was gone. October 11th, 2013. He was 26 years old. His mother told CNN through tears, "Joshua was so kind, so gentle. He loved life. He loved people. He would never hurt anyone, never. He was just a gentle, sweet soul, but he hurt himself. That breaks my heart, that he hurt himself." Butler said, "It is overwhelming to think that with proper intensive treatment, Joshua may still be with us." Gordon Ramsay tweeted, "Just heard the devastating news about Josh Marks. My thoughts are with his family and friends at this tragic time." I want to be careful here, because I've said this before in other videos. Mental illness isn't caused by cooking shows. Schizophrenia has strong genetic components, and it typically onsets in men in their 20s, regardless of what those men are doing with their lives. Josh Marks was probably going to develop schizophrenia, whether or not he'd ever auditioned for MasterChef. But the question Josh's mother and his lawyer raised, and that the industry has never seriously engaged with, is whether these productions have any responsibility to monitor the mental health of the contestants they cast, especially after filming, when the contestant is back home trying to figure out what the hell just happened to their life. Ben Starr wrote a blog post after Josh's death that included this line, "It's time for the industry to look at the mental health of its contestants, not only during filming, but after as well." That was 12 years ago. As far as I can tell, essentially nothing has changed. And now we descend to the bottom of this iceberg, to the case that I almost didn't include in this video because of how genuinely grotesque it is, but it belongs here because it's one of the most extreme examples of what happens when the reality TV celebrity chef pipeline meets a person who should never have been handed a microphone. Cesar Roman was born in Madrid on November 25, 1973. He built his career in the Madrid hospitality scene as a chef specializing in the cuisine of Asturias, the green, rainy region up in northern Spain, and specifically cachopo, which is a traditional northern Spanish dish, essentially a breaded veal cutlet stuffed with ham and cheese, kind of a cordon bleu's bigger Spanish cousin. By the mid-2000s, Cesar had opened 4 restaurants in Madrid and had crowned himself, through a contest he himself created, as the King of Cachopo. He got himself photographed with actors, musicians, celebrities. He won awards that turned out to be fabricated. He gave interviews on Spanish TV cooking shows and food segments. He was, by reputation, one of the most visible chefs in the Madrid restaurant scene. He was also, as it would eventually turn out, a compulsive liar and a con man. The awards were fake. His Best Octopus Prize from the Madrid Regional Food Fair was exposed by a Spanish investigative magazine as a fabrication. His restaurants were closing, one after another, because he couldn't pay his suppliers. The whole King of Cachopo brand was a scaffold of lies bolted together by media appearances. In April 2018, Cesar opened his 4th traditional cider house in Madrid. As part of the opening, he hired a 25-year-old Honduran woman named Heidi Paz Bulnes as a waitress. Heidi had emigrated from Honduras. She had 2 children back home. She was trying to build a life in Spain. She and Cesar started a relationship in May 2018, a few weeks after she started working there. It was a short, bad relationship. She broke it off on June 20th, 2018, via a handwritten note, because she'd had a miscarriage and wasn't okay in the relationship. They stayed casually involved. Heidi was starting to pull away. Cesar didn't take it well. On August 5th, 2018, Cesar ended Heidi's life. I'm not going to dwell on exactly what happened in that apartment, because Heidi's family doesn't need more detail in circulation than is already out there. But I will tell you what came after, because it's one of the most methodical, chilling pieces of post-crime behavior in recent Spanish criminal history. Cesar systematically separated parts of her body in an effort to prevent identification. He placed what remained in a large suitcase. A taxi driver would later testify to police that he drove Cesar on August 5th from his apartment to an industrial warehouse in the Usera neighborhood of Madrid, a warehouse that Cesar himself owned, with that suitcase. In that warehouse, Cesar poured caustic soda, sodium hydroxide, an extremely aggressive chemical that dissolves organic tissue, over what remained of Heidi's body. He attempted to burn it. He was trying systematically to make her unidentifiable. Then he disappeared. Heidi's remains were discovered in the warehouse on August 13th, 2018, still partially in the suitcase. Significant parts of her body have never been recovered. DNA analysis confirmed the remains were hers. Cesar had gone to Zaragoza, about 300 kilometers from Madrid, and taken a job at a restaurant called Casa Gerardo, working under a fake name, claiming to be a Venezuelan man whose parents had owned a tavern in Maracaibo. He'd shaved his head. He'd lost 10 kilos. He'd grown a beard. The owners of Casa Gerardo, Raquel Contreras and her family, saw Cesar's face on a Spanish TV news segment about the manhunt. They called the police. On November 16th, 2018, 3 months after Heidi's remains were found, officers walked into Casa Gerardo and detained Cesar. When they confronted him, he said simply, "I'm the one you're looking for." The trial was held in 2021. Cesar maintained his innocence throughout. He claimed Heidi had been killed by a Honduran drug cartel. He claimed the remains weren't even hers. He said she'd had 2 C-sections, and the remains showed no C-section scars. Forensic experts confirmed it was her. His DNA was found on the suitcase handle, the suitcase's combination lock, and on 2 bottle caps thrown into the trash alongside the empty caustic soda bottles. The jury convicted him. He was sentenced to 15 years for homicide, though prosecutors had requested 26 years for the aggravated form of the charge, and the family's lawyer argued for the maximum available. The court ordered him to pay around $150,000 to each of Heidi's 2 children in Honduras, and around $110,000 to her mother Gloria. In March 2024, 6 years after the crime, Cesar sent a handwritten letter to the Madrid court that had convicted him. In the letter, for the first time ever, he confessed. He admitted that he had ended Heidi's life. He said he was sorry. He said he wanted to end the suffering his actions had caused her family. He offered to give a full statement to a judge and to Heidi's family if they wanted one. His own lawyer immediately told the Spanish press that the confession was only a moment of desperation, and that they were going to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg and to the United Nations to maintain his innocence. The confession, according to his defense team, shouldn't count. In May 2024, Netflix released a 3-part documentary about the case. The director had conducted more than 60 video calls with Cesar from prison over 3 months. The documentary included an extensive, long-delayed interview with Heidi's mother, Gloria Francis Bulnes, who'd returned to Honduras in 2023 after the Spanish justice system finally released Heidi's remains to her family. The documentary's final cut was updated at the last minute to include Cesar's letter of confession. Heidi's remains were buried in Honduras in 2023, 5 years after she was taken. Her children are growing up without her. And Cesar Roman, who built his entire brand on being a celebrity chef, who used television visibility and fake awards and a manufactured nickname to climb the Madrid restaurant scene, is now in prison, still writing letters, still trying to angle for the next move, still trying to be the king of Cachopo in the only court that will still listen to him, his own.